There's a story buried deep beneath the smoke and chaos of war, not about soldiers or generals, but about polished men in tailored suits who moved mountains with a single pen stroke. A story about power without accountability, about gold flowing freely across borders even as bullets tore through nations. This is the story of a bank that didn't choose sides. It funded both. The Bank for International Settlements, BIS, was founded in 1930. On paper, it was just a financial institution created to manage the reparations Germany owed after World War I. But in practice, it quickly became something much more. Nestled in neutral Switzerland, the BIS was above national laws, beyond public scrutiny, and immune to audit. It was a ghost in the global financial machine. During World War II, it became the lifeline for both the Allies and the Axis. When Hitler rose to power in Germany, the world watched with unease. But the BIS didn't flinch. It welcomed Nazi Germany's central bank, the Reichsbank, with open arms. Even after the regime annexed Austria and marched into Czechoslovakia, the BIS didn't pull back. Instead, it did something unthinkable. In March 1939, the Nazis instructed the BIS to transfer $5.6 million in gold from the Czech National Bank's account, an account held at the BIS, to Germany's. The gold had been looted after the Nazis invaded Prague. The BIS obeyed without question, no hesitation, no protest. At that moment, the BIS had made its position clear. It would not challenge power. It would not question morality. It would not recognize theft, even from a sovereign nation under siege. It would only follow instructions and protect the flow of capital. That decision set the tone for everything that followed. As the world descended into war, the BIS didn't just sit idly by. It became an active participant. Central banks from across the globe, some from nations at war with each other, continued using the BIS to manage their assets, transfer funds, and convert currencies. Nazi Germany, Great Britain, the United States, Japan, Italy, all had accounts under the same roof. Transactions continued, even as bombs dropped on cities and soldiers died in trenches. One man, Thomas McKittrick, an American, was president of the BIS from 1940 to 1946. He remained in Switzerland, insisting that the BIS was neutral and committed to financial stability. But neutrality became a shield. McKittrick met regularly with Nazi officials. He approved transactions that helped fund Germany's war machine. He even attended Nazi-sponsored events in Berlin, shaking hands with men who orchestrated mass murder, all while claiming to represent an apolitical institution. While the fighting raged, the BIS facilitated currency exchanges for Germany, allowed gold transfers, and accepted deposits from central banks aligned with the Axis powers. It processed Nazi-looted gold taken from countries under occupation, from plundered vaults, and, most horrifically, from concentration camp victims. Investigations after the war found that the Reichsbank melted down gold taken from Jews murdered in the Holocaust, gold teeth, jewelry, even fillings, and deposited it into accounts held at the BIS. The bank never asked questions. It never paused to investigate. It simply received the metal, recorded the numbers, and continued its operations. The BIS, by its design, was untouchable. It could not be sanctioned. It could not be shut down. Even as governments condemned the Nazis, they continued using the BIS for convenience, for secrecy, and for profit. And this wasn't a case of ignorance. Allied intelligence knew what was happening. Reports were filed. Warnings were raised, but the political will to confront the BIS never materialized. As World War II drew to a close, the world faced a moment of reckoning. In 1944, at the Bretton Woods Conference, the Allies gathered to redesign the global financial system. Voices rose demanding the BIS be dissolved. Men like Henry Morgenthau Jr., the U.S. Treasury Secretary, argued that the bank had aided fascism and betrayed democracy. A motion to shut it down passed, but somehow it was never enforced. The decision disappeared into diplomatic shadows. The BIS survived. It cleaned its ledgers, buried its secrets, and resumed its role as the central bank of central banks. Thomas McKittrick never faced prosecution. He was rewarded with a high-ranking job at Chase Manhattan Bank, an institution also accused of aiding the Nazi regime. Other BIS directors with deep Nazi ties quietly faded into corporate posts or government roles. No jail time, no public inquiry, just silence. In the years that followed, the BIS rebuilt its reputation. It became a cornerstone of the new financial order. Today, it still operates from its headquarters in Basel, Switzerland. It still holds accounts for the world's most powerful central banks. It still facilitates global monetary cooperation. And it is still not accountable to any single government. Few people know this history. Fewer still talk about it. Textbooks often omit the BIS's role in World War II, focusing instead on battles, treaties, and leaders. But behind every war is a shadow economy. Behind every bullet is a transaction. And behind that transaction is often a bank. The BIS teaches us that power doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears a tailored suit. Sometimes it doesn't fight for one side. It funds both. It teaches us that morality in the world of high finance is often negotiable, that institutions designed to stabilize the world can just as easily destabilize it if no one's watching. This is not just a story of the past, it's a mirror to the present. In every modern conflict, banks and financial institutions continue to play roles hidden from public view. Sanctions are evaded, currencies are manipulated, assets are shielded, and somewhere, in a quiet boardroom, someone signs the paperwork. The BIS is no longer the only actor with global reach. Today, we see similar behaviors in sprawling networks of offshore tax havens, international shell companies, and politically connected financial institutions that are used to move wealth in silence. We now live in a world where billion-dollar transfers can happen in seconds, routed through 5 countries before regulators even blink. War might look different today, but the back channels that fund it remain largely untouched. This modern age of financial opacity was built on the foundations laid by banks like the BIS. And as countries battle not just with guns, but with economic warfare, trade embargoes, sanctions, cyber attacks, the need for accountability has never been more urgent. The lessons of the BIS remain unlearned. We still lack mechanisms to hold financial institutions accountable when they facilitate tyranny, war crimes, and corruption. Perhaps the most haunting detail is that during the Nuremberg trials, where top Nazi leaders were held accountable for their atrocities, very little attention was given to the financial systems that made their crimes logistically possible. The factories, the trains, the camps, they all required money. And yet, the bankers behind the curtain were spared the spotlight. That silence, that evasion, that willful forgetting, it's part of the story too. Because what good is justice if it only punishes the visible villains? What good is peace if the same structures that supported war remain intact? The bank that funded both sides of a war wasn't some anomaly. It was a reflection of how easily ethics bend when money moves in secret. And unless we learn to see these institutions not as bystanders but as participants, we're doomed to repeat history. So the next time you hear about conflict in some corner of the world, don't just ask who's fighting. Ask who's funding it. Ask whose vaults are opening. Because in war, there are always men in suits calculating the cost and counting the profit. And sometimes, their pens are far more dangerous than any weapon ever made. What do you think? Was it pure profit or something darker? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this story as mind-blowing as I did, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold truths and hidden histories.